Good afternoon, it's Lee Cassidy, and it's our regular session where we talk about all things security in plain English, not Klingon. And today we're going to talk about the Mitre Att&ck framework. So, in the past, we've talked about all the ways that we can look at protecting ourselves, but actually, it's a very good idea to understand how attack happens, to be able to understand what stage they're in and what activities they're doing around that, to be able to then work out how to protect ourselves. So what we're going to do first is just have a quick recap of all of the actual framework to make sure you've got a bit of a picture of it first. So we'll go through all that and then we'll move on to stage one, which is the reconnaissance stage, which we're going to talk about in more depth today. So let me just get my slides moving. So first of all, let's talk about the actual framework itself. And this has worked on based on reality and the type of attacks that have been happening over many years and giving people a good understanding of how it works. And I'm ex-military, and well, I'm still involved with the military as well, but from a military perspective, any campaign you're going to go into, you're going to look at it based on, the type of activity that you'd normally see in these kind of situations. So you're going to look at, what commonly does the actual organization that you're actually being challenged by, so a country or a particular terrorist group, what framework do they follow in their attack suite sequences? So are they going to do reconnaissance? What kind of things are they going to do, so you can understand what stage they're in, so you can actually fight against it? So let's go through a little bit more of that. So first of all, we're talking about reconnaissance, gathering information, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the kind of information that the hackers are going to gather before they start working against you. Then what they're going to do is build out resources. So they're going to develop those resources and way that they can actually use that to start that attack phase. They're going to do their initial access, and we're going to talk about how those initial accesses come about in a couple of days' time. And then we're going to talk about execution, and that's where they're actually running some kind of software on the assets that they've taken control of at that point in time. They're also then going to look at trying to become persistent within your environment, so you can't get rid of them, so it's easy for them to stay there. And also they're going to do things called privilege escalation. So they're going to make sure that the users that they're utilizing on your assets have got the highest level of privilege, so they can do anything they need to do within your environment. They're going to also try and make themselves evade detection and also being destroyed. So making sure that you can't just wipe them off there using, traditional tools like antivirus type tools and malware tools. They're also going to look at other credentials that they can access. So what other places do you access, and what credentials do you use? Do you use your email, or have you got a specific username? Gather the actual passwords for all of those, so they can actually find lots of other sources of information and places they could actually utilize to build out their information base. They're also going to look at discovery around the network and other places they can get to. So other network devices, other desktop endpoints such as PCs and Macs that are on the network, or that they can connect over virtual private network links. They're also then looking to do lateral movement. So that's moving from one asset. So they've taken control of your Windows PC to go and get onto your colleague's PC or other people within the organization. So how do we do lateral movement? That could be onto an endpoint or onto something like a server instance within your data center, your cloud environment. They're also then going to start collecting data. So they're going to collect the information that they want, whether that's credit card information, if that's something you do, client information, whatever information they're looking to get from you, because they're going to target you for something specific. They're then going to set up what we call command and control. So they're going to get all the assets that they've actually taken control of, communicating back to their effectively management system for their hack. Then they're going to start sending data back. So exfiltration is getting that information they've collected and send that back to the systems that they're utilizing for storage. And then they're going to trigger the impact. So the impact is what they've decided they're going to do with you. So they may be, effectively looking to attack you to make you a ransomware victim. So effectively encrypt all your files and threaten to delete them unless you pay them a ransom. It could be that they're looking for particular information that you hold that they could utilize, or even, as we've seen with a number of these, sidecar type activities where they look for a supplier of a main target and then get into that target via the supplier through a particular application or update or something that's been utilized by the actual intended victim. So what they're going to do and how they're going to get there. So let's talk about Mitre Att&ck and talk about this first stage, reconnaissance. So the first thing they're going to do is do some active scanning. So they're going to scan around and find anything that they can find that relates to you and your organization, anything especially external that they can see. So they're going to look around and try and find machines that they've got access to, services they've got access to that relate to their intended victim. They're also then going to start to gather victim host information. So if you've got any external server hosts, or they can identify any host information, they're going to find that and work out what you've got, what you're doing with it, and the type of operating system being used. Because the type of asset it is and the operating system that's used on that asset will give them options for either vulnerabilities to try against. Log4j was one that we've seen recently, a large amount of attacks towards the end of last year using Log4j, which is a log management system that's used on websites. It's a open source piece of software it's developed in Java. And a lot of people were using that, to exploit websites that were using Log4j. So they're going to gather information about the hosts that you've got, understand exactly what type of hosts they are, operating system, version types, and also if you've patched them as well. They're also then going to start gathering victim identity. So looking at all of your users, and they can do this in many ways. There's a lot of places we can find user information quite openly. So we can go on to LinkedIn and find your company. And from that company, we can find all of the people that say they work for you or have worked for you in the past. So what they can do then is have a look down all of those identities and gather information on what the usernames might be. So first name.surname is quite common for email addresses. So straight away, they can actually utilize that information looking at LinkedIn. And then they can also utilize the same names in other platforms, so other social media platforms, to try and find all of your employees, current and ex-employees that may be on Facebook, Snapchat, or any other social media platform to find where they are. Once they've got that information, what they're looking to do is start to gather information about your network and what your network looks like. So internally, so they can use things like targeted phishing attacks to actually find out what the network looks like and all the sites that you've got. So is it one site with one single network? Is it multiple sites with multiple networks between them? Is it a lot of home users, home workers that are on there? And we see that home workers at the moment are very vulnerable because they're outside of the organization. They're utilizing, in most cases, some of their personal infrastructure, so their home broadband, home router, that could be a little less safe than the core infrastructure that's provided by your business. They're also then going to, extend that organizational information. So find out, do you operate in other countries? Who are your customers? How is your organization relate to lots of different, pieces of the puzzle? So all the different sites in UK, in different countries, how they're connected. Are there any relationships with, sister companies, so we can see if there could potentially be a way in through an alternative organization? Who are your suppliers? Who are your customers? Are there any of those that might be connected to your organization that could be used to infiltrate a much softer target to get in there? And that's why we're seeing more adoption of people checking on their suppliers and customers if they're integrating the system to make sure that their systems are safe and they've got some level of cybersecurity. And that's where things like the IASME-based governance from Cyber Essentials Plus, and IASME governance are coming to their fore at the minute. They're also going to start fishing for information. So they're going to send emails directly to user accounts that are within the organization. They may also then use social media to start gathering information. And there's a lot of social engineering going on inside these social platforms to gather, potential ideas about your, identities, your user base, your information, your staff, and the type of user identities they're using, but also gathering such things as password reset data. So if you consider, I'm sure all of you've been on Facebook or something like that, social media site, and there's some kind of quiz going on, and they're asking you what your first car it was. What was the street that you first lived on? What's your favourite song? Lots of information that could be actually utilised as your password reset information. So once they've gathered all that information, they've associated it with the social media users, but also align that with the users of your organization, they can start using some of that information to try and identify and target your end users quite easily to get more information. Then they're going to search closed resources. And so there are sources out there of information that they may be able to utilize to find out more about your business and how you're set up. Some of this could be actually on the dark web. So they can actually use the dark web to search for information about you, because it could be other hacker groups have actually already started this, reconnaissance work about you as an organization, or they've seen you as a soft target and the actual details about your business has been sold to them. So they can actually gather lots of information that's already been created based on what they know about your business, all of your users, and also the infrastructure that's in place. Also, they're going to use open technical databases. So if they find out that you're utilizing Windows 10 on most of your end user desktops, they're going to have a look at those technical databases to find more information about potential vulnerabilities and potential ways to access your systems, based on their research. And it's like anything. I work predominantly in sales. I focus around IT operations and security. So when I look at targeting a particular customer to sell my solution to, so my services and my protection capabilities, I'm going to look into that organization and gather information before I have that conversation, because I know what I want to know, who I'm talking to and what I need to talk about. So again, these organizations are going to do the same thing. They're going to use as much resources they can find as possible to find out about your organization. They're also going to look at open websites and domains. So they're going to look around and find out all your website domains that you use for email and for web information, to gather that information. And then what they're going to do is search the victim, the target's own websites, and look for any ways that they may be able to target you. They may be able to find some information. It could be you've won an award or something else recently, and that's on your blog page post. It could be a variety of other bits of information that they can utilize to be able to set up the phishing attacks that they use to make sure that your end users actually are fooled into believing this is real information rather than a phishing attack. So lots of different things that they're going to do to actually get to your organization and try and get into it on their next stage. So hopefully that was of interest to you. Stage one of the Mitre Att&ck is reconnaissance, gathering information. It's very similar to what happens before an attack in the real world. When we're actually going to do some kind of military engagement, we're going to go through and do a majority of these things as well. We're going to understand who we're actually going to attack, why we're attacking them, and get as much information as possible in the background. And the hackers are doing exactly the same with this. They're getting as much information as possible about you and your organization before they can actually move in and start the attack. So hopefully that was useful. Like I say, just a couple of things. Tomorrow we're moving on to attack stage 2, which is resource development. So we're going to cover that off tomorrow, kicking off again at 12:30 for 15 minutes, and again delivered in plain English. So hopefully you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, and instead of the Klingon that we get from a lot of technologists and security people, it'll be easy for you to understand. So please join me tomorrow at 12:30 to 12:45. We will talk about Mitre Att&ck stage 2, which is the resource development stage. Thank you very much.